ESPN's The Kingdom, chronicling the Kansas City Chiefs and the history and the pursuit of the three-peat last year. It will be a must-watch for every member of Chiefs Kingdom. It'll be a must-watch for every kid screaming that they want to be a Chiefs fan, because it really detailed a lot of the history of the Chiefs. And I am so glad and so elated that they told every single detail about this team and the history of it, because people really need to know where we came from and why we're so passionate about this team. And it all started with me being elated about the story of the Dallas Texans and how the NFL was actually hating on Lamar Hunt and him trying to get a team in Dallas, Texas for years. And then all of a sudden, okay, we created the AFL. Dallas Texans are here. Now you want to create the Dallas Cowboys. And that's why I always say that the Dallas Cowboys will always be the always save Chiefs. Because if it wasn't for the Chiefs, there would be no Dallas Cowboys. I'm just going to go through several details and notes that I took watching the Kingdom. That just being number one just made my heart smile that they threw that, well, what I perceive as shade. I'm always gonna shade the Cowboys when I have a chance to, bastards.
Lord,
just know, Dallas Cowboys fans, you should, and y'all should watch it too, so you can know where you came from, because you came from us. We birthed you. So if it wasn't for the Chiefs, would be no Cowboys. Alex Smith, when he mentioned that he knew he was getting traded, they cut immediately, and I thought that they did a great job of intertwining the actual footage that they had from the Chiefs into the story. Because if you pay attention to Alex Smith, and he says, he mentions he knew he was getting traded after the Titans game in the wild card in 2017, when Mariota threw a damn touchdown to himself, and Derek Johnson. It could only end that way for Alex Smith, and it was a whole debacle that game. The Derek Johnson, fumble, and then forward progress, and oh man, and I was at that game too. I was at that game. What a terrible game to be at. Anyway, so when Alex Smith is mentioning that game, they cut to Matt Castle. I think he was hugging Alex Smith, and Matt Castle was the backup for the Titans in that 2017 wild card game. And it's poetic justice that, this is the last game before the Mahomes era kicks off. And here's, the last two quarterbacks meeting at half field before Patrick Mahomes. Like, we're only two quarterbacks removed from Matt Castle to now Patrick Mahomes. And what a difference in the worst time in the franchise's history to now the best time in the NFL, in the Chiefs' history. It's crazy, man, how all of that coincided in that game in which Patrick Mahomes was the backup to Alex Smith in that same game we're talking about. And I often wonder, too, if Patrick Mahomes, and not that the Chiefs were going to win a Super Bowl that year, I don't know, maybe they could have. Wasn't that the year the Jaguars went to the AFC Championship game against the Patriots? Hell yeah, it was. So who knows? Maybe the Chiefs could have went to the Super Bowl and beat the Eagles in 2018 that year, because the Patriots were not a juggernaut that year. They weren't, their best. They were still, they were a good team because they went to the Super Bowl against the Eagles, but they weren't the dominating team that they had been in years past in 2017, 2018. But anyway, I think my favorite episode is definitely the Andy Reid episode. And I always knew that Andy Reid was a real one. But for this docuseries to just go in depth and to get really extremely personal with Coach Andy Reid and that the tragedies he's gone through in his life, including the death of his son. And this was probably the part that struck me the most throughout the whole documentary. even with all the other Chiefs history that they go through in there. When Coach Reid lost his son Garrett in his last season with the Eagles in 2012, before he came to Kansas City, I totally forgot they were in training camp. And I believe they said in the documentary, don't get mad if I'm wrong at this, I think they said that Garrett Reid was in training camp with the Eagles. And so, for that man, 24 hours later, after your son's death, to get on a podium and try and hold a press conference and talk football and try to go on with your coaching life and your regular life, it takes a strong individual to do that. And the whole don't judge theme with Coach Reid in his office, I think that explains a lot about him and his heart and how he cares for his players. Like, Coach Andy Reid is going to be one of the biggest figures in football history when it's all said and done. He's going to be like John Madden Jr. Like, not in the same like characterization as John Madden, because he's flamboyant, and while he'll be known for something different, Coach Andy Reid is. I think he'll be one of he'll be remembered as one of the brightest football minds, one of the best coaches, one of the best people on and off the field, man, when it's all said and done. But Coach Andy Reid has always been a real one. He handled that. Imagine trying to handle that Donovan McNabb situation and T.O. situation back in 2004, 2005, and how both players still love him. How T.O. was just at Chiefs camp, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I never thought that they would repair their relationship, because I felt like T.O. back then was trying to make a mockery out of the Eagles low-key. And then his wife mentions that he always had his mustache, but then they cut to, this is another one of those camera things where they integrate the video and the pictures inside the documentary with the story. His wife had mentioned he had always had a mustache, and then he shaved it off in the wedding photos.
I beg your pardon?
Seriously? That's the time that you shave your mustache off, your signature mustache? Because I was like, during the documentary before they got married, I assumed these were pictures before they got married, he had always had the mustache. And I'm like, fam, you gonna cut your mustache off on your wedding picture? My wife would have killed me if she would have saw me with no mustache or no facial hair.
Come on now,
at all
dog.
the days she married me. She would have been pissed.
Come on, man.
So maybe I don't know, maybe it was her idea. Maybe it was his wife's idea. I don't know. But one thing that Coach Reid, as I wrap up with him, is that, and this is something that you have to appreciate with time, and something that the documentary made me appreciate, was he brought more than just winning to Kansas City. He brought more than just a culture change to Kansas City. He brought healing to Kansas City. Because when he was going through his personal tragedy, the Chiefs were going through one too. And only time could make you think about what was really going on. Because the Jovan Belcher situation and Andy Reid were only a few months apart. I think maybe 2 months apart, those occurrences happened. That's a very short time span. And I know at the time, when the season was over, I don't think anybody was still talking about the Jovan Belcher situation. I think that people were focused on the new regime, what the Chiefs are going to look like in the future. That was the worst time to be a Chiefs fan. It was nothing to brag about. It was nothing to have fun about. The team was just pathetic. There was no direction. It was no sense of hope at all. It was no light at the end of the tunnel in 2012. At the end of that year, a 2-12 year, You know, you going through Brady Quinn as your starting quarterback, Matt Castle, and that was just an awful year. That was terrible. And then the Belcher situation. And then oddly enough, the Chiefs win the game after Jovan Belcher. The day after that tragedy happens, the Chiefs play the Panthers. Cam Newton, after his fantastic rookie year in 2011, in 2012, he comes to Arrowhead and the Chiefs get a win. The other win that year was against the Saints on a Jamal Charles, it's like an 80-yard run or something like that. Yeah, the Saints and Panthers were the only wins the Chiefs got that year. So the Chiefs were at rock bottom. Even in the late 70s and 80s, the Chiefs were never that bad in 2012. And so Andy Reid, man, he did a lot for this team and this city. And for himself and his family too, I'm sure. But you know, that the kingdom made me realize how transformative Andy Reid really was with healing, coming from Philly to Kansas City in 2013. You know, the kingdom also brought back so many memories of losing. So many memories of the hard times that we had as Chiefs fans. And to be honest, y'all, I didn't forget about them, but I had kind of like just left them, those memories where they were. I wasn't thinking about none of that. But winning our first playoff game in 21 years in 2015, that was, boy, I thought Andy Reid was one of the best Chiefs coaches of all time, even at that point, to exercise that demon. Just to experience a playoff win. And I remember that game against the Texans. Winning that first playoff game in 21 years just felt so good. Of course, that feeling would last, as the next week we would lose to New England in the divisional game. But you know, remembering how Super Bowl 54, remember how euphoric that was, winning that Super Bowl, how emotional it was, how just I remember the entire town going out and celebrating that night, including myself. I had to. Super Bowl 54 will always be euphorically special. Because it's like we couldn't believe it was happening. Like, this is really happening. This is going on. We're finally getting to this point now. You know, and you know, that's the feelings that the kingdom really brought back from that Super Bowl victory. And then I go to episode 3. And what Chris Jones said after the Panthers game, to me, was very telling. And that the team took not only the Panthers, but I think lesser competition lightly. I think 100% they did. Chris Jones admitted to the Panthers, but I think if you admit that to them, it has to be other teams that you didn't think that were as good as you, that you didn't perform your best in. And I think that's been a mantra with this team for a number of years. Like, you saw the same thing in 2020. The Chiefs and it was the Panthers too. The Chiefs had a close game with the Panthers in 2020. The Falcons, they weren't that good, and they came here and gave the Chiefs some trouble at Arrowhead. It was several games that year. So I think the Chiefs, I don't know what it is with these teams. Is it an Andy Reid thing? I don't know. But for Chris Jones to say that on camera it told me a lot. And then this always trips me out because I've just been a super fan of the National Football League ever since I was a kid, watching NFL films, you know, just watching stuff that was way older than me, something I had no clue about that I wanted to learn about. And I always knew about every rivalry in the NFL. And DeAndre Hopkins didn't know about the Chiefs-Raiders rivalry?
Damn.
What? I don't get that. I don't understand it, man. I don't know. Maybe look, DeAndre Hopkins, he's had his share of struggles and he's had a rough life. So he's had a million other things to pay attention to. So I get that. I understand that. But man, it it really mystifies me how some NFL players are not aware of just some things that are NFL common sense, in my opinion. That was shocking to me. And then the thing that I wanna close with was I want to commend Patrick Mahomes Sr. for getting on camera and talking about his situation with him drinking. He got into a little situation last year to where it was the week before the Super Bowl or the week of the Super Bowl where he got pulled over and I think arrested for DWI, I think, or something like that. I'm not sure totally. But he had a situation, and he seemed like he was so sincere in his apology to his son Patrick Mahomes and apologizing for being a distraction and him having to answer questions about it and this, that, and the third. And I really commend him for doing that. A lot of people just, sometimes would tuck their tail and hide in the corner or wouldn't admit, what they did wrong or would never take accountability for, their actions and affecting what could have been a historic three-peat. I was shocked that that he told his story and I noticed that Patrick Mahomes, his son, is one of the executive directors of this thing, so he has some say and some pull in what went on camera and what didn't. So this, I'm 100% sure this was a family decision, and this is one way to me to get the story out there, to be apologetic, to take accountability, learn from it, and move on. He said that he hadn't taken a drink since, and I've had 2 conversations with Mr. Patrick Mahomes, and I 100% believe him because I know he loves his son to death, and he knows now, I'm sure more than ever, how much his actions actually affect his own son. And him being a former athlete, he knows that takes up your mental capacity when you're trying to concentrate on big stages. So man, I was shocked to see it, but really happy to see that at the same time, man. But again, like I said at the top, man, The Kingdom on ESPN, Bravo, A+ effort. It's gonna be a must watch for every single Chiefs fan in Chiefs Kingdom.